Say goodbye again. Do-do-do-do-do. There you go.
All the muddles and miscommunications that landed me here. All the fights and late night conversations, all the wasted tears. Well, I have made my fair share of mistakes. I'm not an angel, but then again, I'm no fake. And I don't regret a single day. They were the best mistakes I've ever made.
If I asked you straight off the bat, what is the music that made you? What immediately comes to mind?
The Jungle Book. When I was little, my first memory is sitting in our drawing room. We're the sort of family that had a drawing room, and we had the family record player, this big old sort of 60s thing. And I think the only record that I was interested in, certainly, was Walt Disney's Jungle Book.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife.
I just remember being tiny and kind of playing it over and over again, the bare necessities and Trust in Me and all of those songs.
Trust in me.
Do you think they came out in Divine Comedy music? Can we hear those in there, do you think?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of sort of Disney soundtrack vibe in my songs. Because I think people of my age, when we think of sort of those magical feelings, those butterflies in the stomach, we think Disney, really, you know.
Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long.
I have two elder brothers that have new bands that they loved, you know, and I would naturally kind of listen to them. The first big thing was the Electric Light Orchestra. I remember quite vividly Des listening to the whole of Out of the Blue with the lights off in the playroom. We had a playroom. We were that family. And I was there listening to it all with him, and I think that comes out in my music as well. I mean, I do still love ELO, and Jeff Lynne is one of the best songwriters I can think of.
Oh, my perfect cousin, what I like to do, he doesn't. He's his family's pride and joy, his mother's little broken boy.
Well, the first time I sort of saw any music on the telly, on mainstream telly, that seemed to be overtly from my neck of the woods was the Undertones. And to be specific, My Perfect Cousin on Top of the Pops. And that was a weird thing to suddenly see people on Top of the Pops that could have, you know, been at the shop down the road. And I guess that might have pressed a little button in my head going, I mean, you could do that too, you know? It looks like fun. I would pinpoint my dad playing the piano. Usually on a Sunday morning, you'd hear him in the drawing room playing usually something like Khachaturian or Rachmaninoff, something uber romantic. We still have the same piano up in my mum's house, and every time I play it, it's like, it takes me right back. Not least because I wrote a lot of my early songs on that as well.
You don't have to take this lying down, so blow your nose, baby.
My dad always sort of drew the similarity between, you know, me on the stage and he in the pulpit preaching, that they're not a million miles away from each other. And I certainly have to stop myself moralizing in songs and preaching at audiences. buying No Regrets, the best of Scott Walker and the Walker Brothers in 1992 on cassette is like an absolutely formative moment for me.
So take me back. Where did you buy the cassette?
I think I was living on my brother's sofa in Ealing at the time, and yes, I think I bought it in Woolworths. Ah, Woolworths. Because I'd sort of seen his name written in lots of music press, people name-checking him, even down to John O'Neill from the Undertones, who produced our first record, said, "You sound a bit like Scott Walker." I went, "Eh?" It was actually when I saw the advert for it on the TV that just this amazing sound came out of this man's mouth, like I'd never heard anybody make. And I bought the record, and I instantly was just intoxicated. I don't think, I'm a carbon copy of Scott, but I wish. But I do notice sort of vocal inflections that I just learned from him and I can't get rid of now.
I had heard a rumour that you used to send him your records. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. Him and Michael Nyman were the recipients of many posted CDs. I don't know why I did that. It was like I think I owed them a debt. And then I read an article, it was for Les Incorruptibles, the French magazine, and they said, what sort of, do you know of the Divine Comédie? And he said, "Oh, is that little Irish guy who keeps sending me his records?" Yeah, I think he likes my 60s work more than what I do now. And he was right. In the mid-80s, I became an indie kid. It seemed the thing to do when you're 15. My gateway drug into indiedom was U2. A bunch of us from school, scraped and scrimped to have enough money to buy these magical golden tickets to see U2 in Croke Park on the Joshua Tree Tour in 1987. And it's just really pivotal kind of moment for me to be in that space with this band who were literally suddenly the biggest thing on the planet. And it sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it. It really does. A very important musical moment for me was seeing the film A Room with a View, the Merchant Ivory film. It was the sort of combination of the beautiful, clever E.M. Forster story, perfect casting, perfect acting, beautiful scenarios, and this amazing music, mostly Puccini. When she has the kiss in the poppy field is the most romantic thing I've ever seen and heard. And, it'll never get better than that for me, really. I'm just trying to reinvent that all the time.
Sing along with the common people. Sing along and it might just get you through.
There are sort of artists that maybe were contemporaries of mine that were very important, like Jarvis Cocker and Pulp. In fact, formative moment was I was recording Casanova in a studio in Bath called Moles, and they had a nightclub down below. And after a long day's recording, me and Darren, the engineer, went downstairs for a drink. There was nobody in there, but the DJ put on the new Pulp single, Common People. And by the end of it, I just had my head in my hands thinking, how on earth is one meant to sort of, live up to this? This is so incredible. It's definitely in the top 5 songs of the 90s for me. And I was immensely jealous.